Welcome back. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the Pentagon has more than 600 artificial intelligence projects underway. DoD will invest close to $1.5 billion to accelerate AI adoption. Andrei Iancu is Senior Advisor for the Renewing American Innovation Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's former Director of the Patent and Trademark Office. Andrei, welcome. Thanks very much for coming on the program. What do you see as you look across the landscape of artificial intelligence in particular, but the technology, intellectual property landscape in general regarding national security? Welcome.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be with you. Look, AI is a tool unlike any that we have seen to date. And the capabilities that it opens up across the board, both on a national security, from a national security point of view, but also from an economic security point of view, are unprecedented. Imagine, for example, drones or unmanned vehicles or soldiers autonomously driving themselves in the next field of battle. Combine that with other new technologies, such as quantum computing, which can operate at millions of times the speed of the fastest computers here today. And you can see the issues that it can pose. The nation that gets to those combinations of technologies first will have an unprecedented advantage, both militarily and economically.
You and your colleague, former director of PTO, David Kapos, are writing for CSIS about this issue. What do you see as the shortfalls right now in the way that the U.S. is preparing for this artificial intelligence race with China primarily, I imagine also with Russia?
Yeah, and a number of other entities out there, China being the primary competitor right now. Look, for the United States to compete, we need both the public sector and the private sector to operate at their highest capacities. First of all, on the public side, we need more investment into the research and development activities of the nation by the government. On the private side, likewise, we need more companies to invest. However, you know, what the private sector needs in order to invest in these advanced, quite risky technologies from an economic point of view, the private sector needs intellectual property protection so that they know that at least their investments and efforts are protected down the line. The US, frankly, is falling behind on its intellectual property protections, not just with protecting what's already out there from theft from China and others, because that is already taking place, as we all very well know, but it also is failing to a large extent in the forward-looking protections. We need stronger intellectual property laws. We need stronger, more reliable patent rights, for example, copyrights, for example, to make sure that the private sector invests at the appropriate levels.
You note in this work that the IP framework for the United States has not changed dramatically since the Constitution. What should that look like for a mid to late 21st century structure to protect the IP of these companies, these organizations that are developing this IP?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So if you look at the fundamental statute, the initial question that's being asked by the patent statute, okay, which is what human creations are eligible for patent protection, right? Not all creations are eligible for patent protection, right? The fine arts, for example, a song, a dance piece, a movie, those are fine arts. A painting, not protectable by patents, but technologies, right? Computer chips, everything that we can touch and so on, are protectable. Now, that statute was written by Jefferson and Madison in 1793 and has basically not changed since. Of course, our technology has changed dramatically since then. So courts have been struggling with how to apply that original statute for the technologies of the future. Courts are struggling and with how to apply that, for example, to medical diagnostics, DNA technologies, but importantly for AI purposes, to information technologies, to data-driven technologies. We need either the Supreme Court or somebody to fix that issue. But most likely, frankly, in our view, we need legislation to finally tackle those most difficult questions that really haven't been tackled by Congress since 1793.
Andrei, we just have about a minute left. You mentioned the investments that you believe that the public sector needs to make. Specifically for the federal government, how specific should those investments be? How prescriptive should those investments be?
Look, I generally think that the nation needs an innovation plan. And I think the nation needs to sit down at the high level, create a commission, have a lot of input from the public and private sectors to identify what are the key technologies of the future, whether it's AI, quantum computing, autonomous vehicles, biotechnology, a handful more. Let's identify them, and then there should be a framework. This country, though, has benefited greatly from the free market system. The dynamism that's being brought to bear by investors and innovators operating at their full capacity, making their own market-driven decisions. But for that to happen, the government has to provide the appropriate framework of protection and incentives for our free market to operate independently. So I do think that we need a higher level innovation plan, but then to create a framework, but then to allow the free market system to operate at its maximum capacity within that framework.
Andrei, thanks very much for coming on. Much more I'd like to cover, but we're out of time. I appreciate you joining me today.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much.